welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then hi, welcome. My name's Tori and I'm Wild Mother, and on my channel I make videos all about motherhood inspired by nature, which includes topics like eating a nourishing traditional foods diet, keeping your family healthy with herbs and natural remedies, as well as conscious and respectful parenting with a little bit of natural pregnancy and natural birth related topics thrown in the mix. And that's exactly what today's video is going to be about. Today's video, I want to talk about the differences between having a natural hospital birth and a home birth. For a little bit of context, my first birth with my daughter was a completely low intervention natural birth in a hospital, and then my second birth, and with the baby that I just had in October, my son, was a home birth with a home birth midwife team. And so I feel like I have enough experience with the two now that I feel pretty equipped to be able to talk about the differences and the pros and the cons of each. And so that's what today's video is going to be about, and I hope that it helps you if you are a pregnant mama who is debating between the two and not sure what to do. Then I hope that this video will help give you a little bit of insight from a mama who has done both. Before we get started, if you want to follow me on Instagram for more Wild Mother content, the links will be in the description below, as well as if you would like to read about this on my blog, I have an article that I wrote, and the link for that will be down in the description as well. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first is prenatal care. So some of the differences that I noticed between my natural hospital birth and my home birth, or I guess specifically with prenatal care, it would be more like with the providers. So the differences between using an OB office and a midwife, a home birth midwife. The OB office that I chose and that I birthed with my daughter in the hospital did have CNMs, certified nurse midwives, on staff, and they also had OBGYNs. And then of course, my home birth midwife was just a regular midwife, a CNM, and that consisted of the midwife, and then the birth assistant was my team. So one of the pros during prenatal care to me is that with home birth midwives, you can schedule an interview to be able to meet them and talk to them about your preferences and get a vibe kind of for how you guys get along. And then you can also ask them any questions that you have for how they would handle different situations. Now, you may be able to do this with an OB office, but I kind of doubt it. But with your home birth midwife, you can schedule an interview, whether it's in person or on the phone, and get to know them and ask them any questions you have before you commit to care with them, which I really, really enjoyed. Another thing that I really enjoyed is that with the home birth midwife, the appointments are longer, at least in my experience. All of this is just my experience, of course. But in my experience, with a home birth midwife, the appointments are allotted more time. So usually it's 30 minutes or sometimes 60 minutes, a full hour, and you're not rushed. And that's really nice because with my first pregnancy with the OB, I was allotted, I think, 10 to 15 minutes. And so it was always just rush in, ask, do you have any questions? No? Okay, bye, and leave. Because we were allotted more time with the home birth midwife, it was much more personable, and we kind of got to know each other, and they got to know my desires and my birth plan, and they remembered me, and they got to know my daughter and everything. So that is one thing that I really liked. I also love that the office space of the home birth midwife was really cozy. Now, I know there are different types, different midwives do it differently. Sometimes the midwife will come to your home for your prenatal checkups, which is cool. And in that case, that's really cozy. But sometimes you go to your midwife's office. And in my case, I drove to her office for most of my prenatal visits. And it was a really cozy area. It had a couch. There was no uncomfortable bed with white paper like an OB office, it's just a couch and chairs, and just really laid back and relaxed and chill. Another thing that I really enjoyed about the prenatal care with the home birth midwife is that I was allowed to bring my children in, my child, my toddler, and I don't really know, it's hard to remember the pre-COVID days. I don't really know if an OBGYN office before COVID would let you bring in your children. I don't know, but I think most of them are not allowing you to bring in your children now, and I don't even know if you were allowed to before, but that's just one thing that's nice. It's a really laid-back environment at a home birth midwife's office. Another pro to me during prenatal care was with the midwife. They tend to be more holistic minded just because, they believe that women are fully capable of birthing their babies on their own without intervention, and yeah, and that birth is natural and safe. And so generally they tend to be more holistic minded, which for me is a huge pro, because then I don't get pushback on the different things that I want. And it's so nice that they're knowledgeable in like herbs and stuff, because if I had a question about an herb that I wanted to take, I could just ask the midwife and she would instantly know, like, oh yeah, that one's fine for you to take during pregnancy. Or I just really prefer when providers are more holistic and like-minded with me, which I think that's kind of what you want in any provider that you look for. You want them to be like-minded and supportive of your choices. And so that's another thing, is that the midwives were supportive of all my choices during prenatal care. And they were really good about telling you, you know, informed consent, basically the pros and the cons of every procedure or thing that happens during your prenatal care, the risks and the benefits, and then just leaving it up to the mom to decide what is the best thing to do. So it's all about trusting women and trusting mothers, which I really appreciate. So those are the things that I loved about having a home birth midwife during my prenatal care. So let's move on now to birth, labor and birth. Okay, so during labor, of course, an obvious pro is that you're able to labor at home if you do a home birth. Although I will say, even with a hospital birth, if you're planning a natural hospital birth, you can still labor at home for as long as you can. That was my experience. My husband and I stayed home for as long as we could until my contractions were really close together. And then of course they spread out like in the car when we got there, but I didn't get to the hospital till I was 8 centimeters dilated, and that was exactly what I wanted, because the longer you're at the hospital, the more time that there is for them to push an unnecessary intervention on you, because once you're there and you're clocked in, you're kind of on their time. So as long as you can stay at home in labor, totally recommend you do it. Plus, not to mention, you're just going to be more comfortable in your home. And that's one thing that is a huge pro to having a home birth, is that you can lay in your own bed, you can get in your own shower, you can lean on your own couch, you know, you can walk through your own kitchen. Another thing that a lot of people want when they're planning to have a natural birth is to be able to move around and to eat during labor. I love that when you're at home, you can freely move around and eat during labor as much as you want. And eating during labor is of course important to keep your energy and your blood sugar up. And sometimes in the hospital, women have trouble. They really have to push if they want to eat. Sometimes they don't want you to eat in the hospital. In my experience at the hospital, I was able to move around freely and eat what I wanted to, whatever we brought. And I was also able to do that at home. Same for being able to have dim lightings and set up your own environment to be able to relax. Of course, at home, it's going to be way easier because you can have everything pre-set up. You can have as many lights as you want, as many candles and diffusers as you want. And if you go to the hospital, you just have to take it all with you and hang it up. But we did that with my first birth. We took little gentle lights, and we took like birth affirmations and the diffuser, and we hung it all up and made the room as peaceful as we could. Another thing is that at home, everyone was really respectful of my birthing space and treated it kind of as sacred. And that was what I wanted, you know, people to not be talking and chatting back and forth or coming in loud and like disturbing me when I was in my zone. So that was really nice at home to just be able to get into my zone. However, I will say at the hospital, as best as they could, the staff really did do their best to just leave us alone, because that was what we wanted. So they weren't even in the room most of the time. Once I started pushing my baby out, so many hospital staff came into the room just waiting for the baby to be born in case there was a problem with the baby, I guess. And so it was no longer just my OB and the nurse that were in there. It was other people too. And then of course they brought out like big lights so that they could see. And so the environment for actually birthing my baby kind of became very different from how it was in my hospital room when I was just laboring. And it kind of became pretty intense. And so I really appreciate that at my home birth, the vibe stayed exactly the same from when I was laboring to when my baby was born. He was born in a dark, peaceful, calm environment with no bright lights shining on him, and not a bunch of people around. So that made me feel really safe. So that was definitely more of a pro with the home birth to me. Something I really loved about the home birth was that I had no cervical checks. So I was pretty adamant at the hospital that I didn't want cervical checks. However, they do one upon admittance to see what your dilation is when you're admitted. And then they say they have to do one before pushing, just to make sure that you're fully dilated before you push. And so that's how I knew I was 8 centimeters when I got there, but I did not let them touch me at all during labor. And then they didn't even need to check me when I started pushing, because I just waited until my body started pushing and the fetal ejection reflex happened and the baby was coming out, whether they wanted the baby to come out or not. But I was definitely 10 centimeters dilated then. So I really liked that at home with my home birth, I had no cervical checks the entire pregnancy or the labor or the birth. So moving into more of the birth section, that was all the labor things, the differences between the labors. So now moving into the birth section, the biggest difference was that I was able to give birth in the water at home. At the hospital, I labored in the tub, and that was really nice because I was able to fully relax. My water broke in there. That's where the fetal ejection reflex started happening. My body was like, we're pushing this baby out whether you want to or not. But at home, I was able to get in the birth pool, and then the fetal ejection reflex happened when I fully relaxed, and I just able to stay in there. Nobody came up and was like, oh my gosh, get out of the bath, like they did at the hospital. And so, yeah, that was really nice to just be able to stay in the tub and give birth in the water. Another difference is that I got to leave the placenta attached as long as I wanted to with my home birth. We did delayed cord clamping at the hospital. They probably left it attached for 5-10 minutes. It was till it stopped pulsating. But I always kind of wished, like, man, I wish we could have left it attached longer, because like, why do we have to cut it early? You know, why do we have to stop leaving? Why do we have to cut it after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever? Why can't we just leave it attached? So for my home birth, I really wanted to be able to leave my son's cord attached for much longer. And I didn't really have a particular plan for how long I wanted to leave it attached, but anyway, we left it attached for at least 2 hours, and there was nothing left in that cord to get him. He got every drop out of it, which is exactly what I wanted. So that is one thing that I really liked about having the home birth. And you know, at the hospital, maybe I could have really pushed and been like, no, we're leaving that attached, get me a bowl. Like, I probably could have pushed and they would have done it, but the baby was born and like she was safe and healthy, and it didn't feel like something I wanted to create a fight about then at the time, which is kind of sad. But yeah, so I really liked that the home birth, it was just no problem to leave it attached for as long as I wanted it to be attached. And then another thing, of course, that was different that I loved is that with my home birth, we were all able to snuggle up on our couch after the birth and after the midwives left and just get rest and enjoy the newborn snuggles with our sweet new baby, and just as a family, just so peaceful and so relaxing. Okay, and then the last thing where I really saw a huge quality difference in my care with the home birth was in postpartum. There are way more appointments in the first 6 weeks of your postpartum with the home birth midwife. They came back at 1 day, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, and 6 weeks. They were always checking in on me. I actually got my midwife's number to be able to text her questions anytime. And that just made me feel so reassured and so taken care of, and like I wasn't just another number. Like, they really knew me and they wanted to make sure I was okay. And I think that modern obstetrics kind of leaves women just hanging in postpartum. It's a challenging time, and to just say, okay, bye from the hospital and come back at 6 weeks and we'll check you and make sure that you're healed up down there, it's not really what women need. But the home birth midwife, I felt so taken care of during those 6 weeks postpartum. They were always checking in on me, and of course I was able to ask any questions anytime I had them, which just made a huge difference. So overall, those are the differences between my natural hospital birth and my home birth, and using OBGYN versus using a home birth midwife. I hope that you guys appreciate this video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Stay wild, mamas. Bye.